Welcome to Technovation. I'm Peter High. My guest today is Michael Taylor, the Chief Technology Officer of Worldwide Technology, which is a service provider that offers technology and supply chain services to companies around the globe to the tune of $14 billion in revenue annually. As CTO, Mike runs the traditional CIO function, global engineering and services, and has a team of 2,400 people reporting to him. Mike, great to see you today.
Yeah, good to see you as well. Looking forward to the conversation.
Likewise. Well, I appreciate you taking time for it. Mike, let's begin with Worldwide Technology. For those people who might be less familiar with it, give us just sort of a thumbnail sketch of the business, please.
Sure. We are a global technology solutions provider. We're privately held. Our two founders are still both involved in the business, with our CEO, Jim Cavanaugh, running the organization. We have over 7,500 employees globally. Our primary centers of operation are in the United States, EMEA, Asia Pacific offices. And we really sit, Peter, I'd say in the mix related to discrete technology transformations customers are going through. Digital transformation is a big part of our business and what we're doing. This approach to multi-cloud technologies and architectures is a big area. And then security overall, as I'm sure you and many of your listeners are aware, just omnipresent in almost anything we're doing. And our position in the market really is we're bringing a perspective that spans the established on-premise technology providers with the public cloud providers, and even a mix of new and emerging startups out of the private equity ecosystems in the Bay Area and beyond, to help our customers stitch together architectures, solutions, and fundamentally outcomes that are going to impact their business. And it's been an exciting ride, for me, certainly at Worldwide, and then in the technology ecosystem overall. There's no shortage of fun, change, and innovation to keep up with.
Mike, you've been with the company for more than 2 decades, and roughly 2/3 of the time the company's been in existence. I can only imagine the growth that you've seen, as well as the evolution of your offering, as I'm sure that has dovetailed with the dramatic change in the technology landscape across the past couple of decades. I wonder if you could take a moment and reflect upon all that growth and all of that change.
Believe it or not, started as an intern, and at the time, I think the company was a couple hundred people. What I really found interesting about what we were doing was, one, just, this was kind of back in the .com era, and, all of the craziness that you saw in the markets, and along with technology startups, but probably more than anything, that to me was really seemed to be the advent of the impact technology could have on business, and consumerization, and, the connectedness between these large organizations and the preferences of a particular person, as an example. And so really following that trend and evolving Worldwide from, at the time, the predominant portions of our business were around reselling technology products into the telecommunications and federal spaces, to beginning at those stages, imagining what services and capabilities we might be able to wrap around, as well as, I'd say, Peter, in general, which, this could be a whole podcast in and of itself, but the use cases and the transferability of use cases across industry from a technology perspective was something we felt a responsibility to start bringing forward to the market, to our customers. And it's been, an exciting ride from the late 90s, through the .com bubble and financial crises, 2007 to, COVID even, and this year, managing through that. But, really excited to have found this company, and we'll talk more about it as we get into it. But I think, in particular in the times of uncertainty, the value of a strong culture inside of an organization, one that not just permits innovation, but encourages it, I think are some of the elements that have kept me energized over the years and excited about what the next 10 plus can offer.
Very interesting. Well, I mentioned at the outset, of course, you were the Chief Technology Officer, and that's a role that means so many different things in so many different organizations. Yours is quite a strategic role. You've got the CIO that reports into you, and so some of the traditional IT functions that others would be familiar with. You have a global engineering team. You run the services business. I believe you have roughly 2,400 people reporting to you, if I recall prior conversations we've had. So it's enormous scale in terms of your organization. Talk a bit about, if you could add a little more color to the purview of what I've just described, I'd appreciate it.
Sure, and I would say one advantage, I certainly feel blessed to have had is to be working in technology for a technology company. It doesn't take much for me to explain to our CEO, to our board, and our executive team the importance that technology can play in helping transform and grow a company. So I've certainly had that advantage. I think the vision around the role that I play with the company is, if you think about the technology systems that we use to run and operate our company, again, a global operation, 14 billion in revenue, that in and of itself, you gain, unique perspectives on what's working. And as much, I'll keep talking about, the technology side, but so much of this is cliched, but an even balance of people, process, and technology. And more so, the people and process side of this is where I'm spending more of my time, along with, our teams, and even how worldwide interfaces with our customers. But the ability to see how technology is consumed and operationalized in the role of the CIO and that function, all the way through some of the innovation and activities that we're trying out in our advanced technology center, where we're taking established on-premise technology with emerging startups, including, public cloud platforms, application development, data science. We think of that as the playground, if you will, but not for the purposes of trying things out and then kind of moving on to what's next, but really taking those learnings in our advanced technology center, the lab capabilities that we've constructed there, and determining how applicable are these things to the general markets that we serve. And that could be within a Fortune 50 company. It could be, across industries, banking, healthcare, energy, manufacturing, trying to give, and the phrase I always use with our teams, Peter, is, how do we get from the art of the possible to the art of the probable, and reduce the number of permutations that we might encounter, as technology is changing in and around us. And that's what our Advanced Technology Center labs help us do, all the way then through bringing those things to life for a customer. And, the model we've started, using internally at Worldwide and even a bit externally in the market is, we're out to help make a new world happen and escalate our viewpoint from just technology outcomes to impacts that we can drive, in an organization's relationship with their customer. To you talk to more people than I do, probably, Peter. And I'd say one thing that everyone, in their role is looking to do, motivated folks are looking to move to higher orders of work. They want to eliminate mundane, repeatable tasks. And you see that through, digital assistants you could go and use to try to, better organize your calendar or things like that, all the way to, predictive maintenance on heavy equipment, that we might be working on with a customer. But the introduction of digital technologies, mindsets, along with data science, is just a pattern that we see being repeated over and over again out in the market. And it's an evolving space. You've got to experiment there a little bit, do some trial and error with the established and the startup communities to figure out solutions that are gonna work for our customers. So I get to see it end to end, from the good, bad, and the ugly of what we operate, to the innovation those teams drive, to how we're helping our customers achieve some of those same outcomes.
And a lot of your customers are your peers, the technology leaders in their own companies as well, Mike. And so I talk a bit about, you're not a salesperson per se, but you're a very interesting advocate, in as much as you're doing a lot of the things that they are doing in their companies, while also being a representative of a company that they might engage with. Talk a bit about that level of partnership, if you would. Yeah,
and it's a great question, a great point. And I think one thing you would hear me say, to the teams, to our customers, is, no one wants to be sold to. They really don't. I think the approach that we're taking, and that I take, even, some of the events, Peter, I'll see you attending, is, I'm in a room with individuals that are both our customers and our peers, and so my take there is I'm not there to, to sell anything. I'm there to learn from what other individuals and teams are doing. But at the end of the day, I don't think people want to be sold. I think they want to be advised, and they want to learn about what other people are doing. And if I bring something to light there, or my teams, or worldwide in general, that is new, different, or at a minimum just informing a strategy that they may already have in motion, um, I think that's how you build relationships, and I think that's how you build credibility with people. So yeah, you wouldn't. I think if you knew me, or the folks listening, if they knew me very well, they'd certainly say I wouldn't be the most savvy of salespersons out there interacting with a customer. But I do try to bring credibility and back that up, with some experience that we've had in our labs with other customers, or even, as I mentioned before, some of the internal systems and things that we use to run worldwide as a company.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. Talk a bit about the strategy you and the team are operating against now. You alluded to some of the areas in which you're involved in, and some of the topics that are of greatest interest to your peers and customers and other organizations. But I would love to have you add a little more detail to some of the areas that are of at the top of your priority list now.
Sure. I'll start. Two themes that I think about as it relates to investments that we're making, time that we're spending thinking about things and solution development. The first is, we want to be and connect technology to business or IT outcomes. I mean, fundamentally, we want to help our customers, our partners, better advocate for the use of technology in delivering some material benefit to the company. And that could be as interesting as, new digital channels using, web, mobile, that sort of thing, to providing a more reliable or integrated service to the employees that provide a service to their customers, streamlining a sales process, integrating systems to reduce manual work amongst disparate organizations within a company. All of those things, connecting technology to those business outcomes is critically important for us, and challenge our teams every day. How are you thinking about what you're doing and the impact and outcome that can have on the business? I think of Daniel Pink's book, right? It's mission purpose. People want to know why they're doing something, and the really good people want to know what sort of impact did I have. And I think it's critically important we connect those dots. The other element that we're more and more involved in is this idea of digital and physical, and connecting these digital and physical worlds. And some of the challenges in the market that create opportunities for a company like Worldwide are, I'll use hyperlocation, right? We work with customers around how do you provide hyperlocation inside of a grocery store, or inside of a retail space. Now adapting those concepts to figure out, what sort of distance and safety tracking could we provide as it relates to a pandemic and exposure and contact tracing. But, you really have to take time to instrument a system that's going to give you that level of detail in terms of an individual's proximity. But then you have to take all that data and you have to digitize that to a map, a set of outputs or intelligence that drive behaviors, within a customer. So connecting those digital and physical worlds together, in data being an underlay of all of that, is a huge area of investment for us. So connection to those outcomes, digital, physical, and those two worlds really colliding are big areas of focus for us. And then the last thing I'll say is just, we view our responsibility to connect the creation of the strategy to achieve those outcomes I talked about, connecting the strategy to the delivery, because we feel like there's just a need in the market between what I'll call the 50-page white paper and the outcome that shows up on a balance sheet for a company. And we're disintermediating, I think, that market a bit to say, how do we connect those two things together and, hold ourselves, along with the customers and partners that we're working with, accountable to those outcomes, through this creation of the strategy and the delivery of those results.
Yeah, very interesting. I appreciate you sharing each of those. I know another area that you and the broader team have been thinking about is D&I, diversity and inclusion. And I wonder if you can kind of reflect, especially in a year, the past year, in which it has come into focus for a variety of unfortunate reasons, but perhaps with some silver linings for some of the changes that organizations are undertaking as a result of it. Talk a bit about some of your perspectives and the way in which worldwide technology is thinking about it, making advances from a D&I perspective.
You bet. And so I would start with, I talked about our founders, Dave Stewart and Jim Kavanaugh. Dave is an African-American man, helped start the company back. We're 31 years now, almost in a month or two. We'll be at 31 years of the company. So being a privately held and minority owned business, I think we've had diversity inclusion is something we had been thinking about, whether that's the employees that we're hiring, the individuals that we're developing inside the company, as importantly, the partnerships that we establish with other minority owned businesses has been something that we've been focused on from the beginning, and based on how we were founded, frankly. The unique part of this, and I'd say an area, Peter, being a bit vulnerable in the discussion here, would be an area I've learned a great deal about over the last 12 to 14 months, is getting to know and understand the perspectives of the employees that we have inside of Worldwide and the experiences that they have had, prior to coming to Worldwide, and the experiences that they have while they're at the company, to inform what we ought to be thinking about and doing as an executive leadership team. And, following, I'd say the unrest, in particular in late May and early June, we started having listening tours. And we started this off with every executive within the company had set up time with, at the time, Black employees in their organization to just reach out and touch base on how are they feeling? What are they hearing? What do they think we should be doing to support not just them as employees, but the communities that they lived and worked in? And I can tell you, those were not easy conversations. One, I give our employees a lot of credit for the fortitude that they had, one, to just come in and share those ideas and speak freely. I think we learned a lot as a company in terms of things that we could be doing, to take what I think are really good focus programs and make them even better. And a couple of our key observations there were, one, we're still doing listening tours today. So we haven't stopped that open communication. And while it seems like a no-brainer, every month we have 4 or 5 of these that the executives are hosting to keep in touch with our employees on both the diversity and inclusion topics, as well as, I'll say COVID and work from home, stress that the teams might be under. But for us, it was about getting more focused with all the organizations that we were supporting and operationalizing how we could better recruit into our company diverse talent. And I mentioned, I think earlier, we're headquartered in St. Louis. That said, more than half of our employees are somewhere else in the world, there. So, and I think the advent of remote work has allowed us more freedom, frankly, to pursue talent, diverse talent in particular, in other areas and geographies, rather than, our centers in New York or St. Louis or Phoenix, Northern California. That's opened up an aperture to us. But I would say that the first step that we took that's having a meaningful impact on our people, our diversity, and the communities that we live and work in is partnering with programs that help develop skill sets and technology focused on that outreach into diverse communities, and then bringing those individuals on to WWT.
Excellent. I also wanted to ask you about, you in referencing the past year and the many learnings from it. I wonder what reflections you have and what changes you see afoot with regard to the future of work and how work is being done. You mentioned half your staff are in St. Louis, where you're headquartered. The other half are around the world in other places. Do you foresee a different way of working in the future than, let's say, January of 2020 before the quarantine, the pandemic and the quarantine began in earnest here in the U.S.?
I do. I think, again, cliched, I think, new normal or, I'll hear people ask, when are things going back to normal? I don't think they're going back to normal. I think that, our findings, we've surveyed we've surveyed our employees. I mentioned the town halls that we're doing to get feedback. What I hear and our thought process as an executive team is to err on the side of flexibility and empower our people with choice, right? And what I've heard, and this is where I think, from the D&I perspective, from a perspective of COVID and work from home and future of work, so many of these things are individualized, down to a person's particular, circumstance. Could be, both them, their family, other obligations that they have, their risk profile. How do they think about risk and then I think also just their personality, introverted, extroverted, all those things that come into play here. Our position back to our employees is we want to offer choice, flexibility and choice first. And what we see predominantly in that survey data is most people, I think it was 80% plus, and I don't remember the exact stat, but I know it was above 80% plus of our employees will be working from home or remotely more frequently. We believe that to be true. The second element that I would say is we still, though, have a group of our employees who want to come into an office. And those reasons vary, right? Could be, their home situation. We have, early in career employees that live in and around metropolitan cities. Their room, they're sharing rent or they're rooming with somebody, and it's not effective for 3 or 4 of them to be, in a New York City apartment all day working together. And so we want to, again, offer that flexibility to our employees and say, everybody's circumstance is going to be a little bit different. Here are some parameters we could set out around, dedicated space versus shared. But overall, I think it's going to be a predominantly more remote workforce in the future for us.
Makes sense. I appreciate you sharing those perspectives. You mentioned earlier that the first several times it seems like we met were at gatherings of CIOs and CTOs, as well as venture capital events centered around insights around the portfolio companies that the VCs were invested in, these sorts of things. You're clearly somebody who's very immersed in the broader technology ecosystem. Talk a bit about how you think about curating your own ecosystem to make sure that you are regularly updated and cognizant of the evolution the technology is taking and its implications to you and to your company.
Sure. Yeah. And I think, again, I feel very fortunate to, be in tech for a tech company. We get to work with some of the coolest, most innovative companies in the world. And, you've seen some of that firsthand at some of the showcases that we've attended and bumped into each other with. I think of this in its most basic form. I try to manage a third of my time with my team, a third of my time with our customers, and a third of my time with our partners. And, those partners are, you think about anything from the largest, most established, technology providers to the public cloud providers to, some of the startup communities that are out there disrupting. As you can attest, it's a smaller world than you think in technology in terms of, groups and teams that move from some of the bigger companies to the startups and this startup to that startup. But I think the balance of those 3 perspectives, what our teams are doing to innovate in our labs, what our customers are doing to, innovate, drive value in their business, and then that partner ecosystem, it just affords at least 3 different lenses to kind of how organizations are thinking about disruption, thinking about digitizing their businesses, connecting technology with those balance sheet outcomes, that I was referring to earlier. As well as challenge, I think, my traditional thinking as a technologist on, what is possible and where are some of these things going. I think we would all say AI is here. It's here to stay. Is it completely artificial versus augmenting humans? I mean, I think some of that's still to be determined, but absolutely the methods that we can apply to these large sources of data and the outcomes and suggestions, if anything else, that we can provide to clinicians, financial advisors, individuals that are working call centers or service desks. We just see over and over that it's providing speed, efficiency, and as I mentioned earlier, as important, it's elevating the level of work and the type of work that people are doing, and they get more inspired about that. They feel better about providing and being connected to those outcomes versus things that we can automate in the spirit of efficiency and leading people to higher orders of work. So it's a fascinating time, and I'm sure that it's only going to get more fascinating as we continue to run.
No doubt. So very interesting. I love the way you frame that third between the team, the customers, and with partners. Obviously, you've got a great network that you are tapping frequently to understand trends on the rise and their application potentially to worldwide technology. You've mentioned several of them as you've talked about your priorities, but I wanted to hear towards the close of our conversation to ask you about, as you look to the future, say a few years out, what other trends excite you?
Yeah, I think the relationship, the B2B relationship for our customers evolving to everybody wants the B2C relationship. Everybody, our distribution partners, our our clinical systems, our hospital systems, everyone's looking at how do they take the technology that they have and maybe methods that you would normally attribute to a customer loyalty program or personalization around even apps you'd use to order your lunch, as an example. More and more, whether it's healthcare, manufacturing, energy, all of financial services, certainly, everyone is looking to figure out how they get closer to their customers. They want to own more of that relationship, and I think that's a trend that we're going to see continue into the future, just digitizing that interaction and offering customers more choice as it relates to how they interact with the companies that they do business with. I think that trend is going to continue to move forward. And I think in a lot of ways, COVID's accelerated that, certainly, in terms of remote anything that we see going on, whether it's DoorDash or as sophisticated as telemedicine, those things are happening at greater rates and speeds. And you see a lot of companies, worldwide included, participating in how that's going to play out. The second I'd really point to is this idea of application, I'll say application architecture, but runtime instances for applications and this move to edge computing, getting workloads, getting computation closer to the consumer. And we debate this internally at times fiercely, Peter, on so in one sense, you'd think 5G and the connectivity speeds that 5G provides would potentially reduce the use cases for edge, but we are not seeing that at all. We're seeing the edge strategy, whether it's an on-premise, whether it's leaning into the public cloud providers and what they offer in terms of solutions that sit externally to their data centers, edge, and imagining what we can do together at the edge for the purposes of business, technology, patient sort of outcomes. I think is something that is going to continue to charge forward. And the last one, I'd go through 20 of these, but these are the ones I really think about every day. The data side of this and the maturity of whether it's artificial intelligence or augmented intelligence that we're applying to human beings, I think is going to be just a powerful trend for the next 10 years. And it could be as simple as, how do we make your call center experience with your internet service provider the next time you call them? How do we make that a lot more comfortable and beneficial to you? To machines, algorithms, and data, that are augmenting medical devices, doctors, nurses, and procedures that they're providing, for their patients in hospitals, and then just everything in between. But I don't talk to a customer really ever without some discussion around how do I better leverage the data that I have to improve the efficiency in my organization and better define or refine the strategies that we're using to grow our company or our business.
Great trends to highlight, certainly, Mike. Well, Mike Taylor, thank you so much for joining me on Technovation today. A great conversation about your company, its remarkable growth, your growth and responsibilities at the same time across your couple decades with the company, the areas that you're focused on, the collaborations that you've forged, and the insights you've drawn from those collaborations. It's been a great conversation.
It has, yeah, and always good to see you.
Thank you so much, Mike.